Hello, I'm Bruce Duthu. I'm on the faculty at Dartmouth College in its Native American Studies program. I'm a member of the Houma Indian Nation of Louisiana, and I'm very pleased to welcome Ada Deer, a former chairwoman of the Menominee Nation and Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs under the Clinton administration during the 1990s. Ms. Deer is at Dartmouth serving as a fellow under the auspices of the Montgomery Endowment. And she's here to speak about her work as former Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, as well as giving us a look prospectively at the state of affairs today under the new administration of President Barack Obama. Ada, can you talk to us about your life as Assistant Secretary of Interior? What are the 2 or 3 accomplishments during those years that stand out for you during your years under the Clinton administration?
Well, the first one is actually being named Assistant Secretary. And this needs to be understood in the context of tribal history as well as the history and politics of this country. So to make a long story short, I was motivated to work to help American Indian people by my wonderful mother, who was an English descent of an English descent family here in the East in Philadelphia, Quaker heritage. And I'm a social worker. I became the first woman chair of the Menominee Nation after our tribe achieved restoration, which is another long story. But we were the first tribe in this country to be terminated, and a number of us decided that this was not going to be tolerated, and we started the grassroots movement, which then resulted in the historic victory of the Menominee Restoration Act, signed by President Nixon in 1973. Now, this is very important in the history of Indian affairs as well as in the political history of this country, because this is the first time that a small American Indian tribe with the grassroots movement of strong support from the people achieved this very historic victory. And then I returned to the reservation and became the first woman chair, and we implemented the Restoration Act. We developed the Constitution and got that passed. We set up a whole new relationship with the federal government, federal protection, not federal domination. And so that was very important. So I've been very active in Indian affairs. I went on to become board member of the Native American Rights Fund, which is the NAACP of the Indian world and has brought about many, many historic victories. And they, along with the judiciary lawyers, really provided expert legal assistance to us during the whole restoration effort. Then I ran for Secretary of State twice. I was just curious. I got convinced to do it, so I did it. And I had a lot of fun running around northern Wisconsin talking to the white male newspaper editors about the duties of the Secretary of State. I did not win. I should mention that it's very difficult for any woman, and especially a woman of color, to win elections, both tribal and state or local. It's starting to change, but that's another long story. At any rate, I came in 4th in the field of 9 in the first race, and then I became convinced to do it again, and I was convinced to do it again because you don't always win the first time. So I thought, well, okay, so I came in 2nd in the field of 4, so that was good. I thought, well, I'm done with that. Then my friends decided that I should run for Congress. So I did run for Congress, and I won the Democratic primary in Wisconsin. This was very unusual for an American Indian woman social worker to run for such a political office. I did not win the general election because, again, it's very difficult to win. At any rate, I thought I was done, and then I read where President Clinton said he was looking for a government that looked like America. So I thought, oh, wow, here I am, American Indian woman social worker. And so that's another long process to be nominated for such high office. And I want to mention to everybody that it's really important to lead a good, clean life. The only thing I told the FBI, they didn't ask me, but I went into the local office once and I told them that I was being considered for a high position, and the only thing they were going to find on my record was speeding tickets, because the deer is in fast gear and the world's in slow gear. And they all laughed at me, and then I went on. So I became the first woman assistant secretary. And most people say Native woman. No, lots of people don't listen. First woman assistant secretary in the Department of Interior. Of course, that was Indian Affairs. I shouldn't say of course, because I did tell the headhunters that I was interested in being an assistant secretary, and they said, oh, Indian Affairs? I said, well, yes, I could do that. However, I could also occupy a position in HUD, or Housing and Urban Affairs, in health and education. And one of the points here is that if you have a brown skin in our society at this time, generally people put you in a category. Well, I never accept these categories. I just plow ahead and do what I want to do, and I did then become this assistant secretary. And so I didn't do this all by myself. Life is a process. Many people helped me along the way. My name came up on 4 lists. I don't know how many lists it takes for the guys to get these jobs. Now, I have nothing against guys, but we live in a racist, sexist society. And so people need to understand it, accept it, and move on. I've been very active in my own tribe and in Indian Affairs. I became chair of the Native American Rights Fund board and was also on their support committee for a long time. I have been active in my profession, social work. I was president of the State Association of Social Workers, and I served on many national committees of the National Association of Social Workers. I won the Democratic primary, and that was a real accomplishment in the political arena. And I do belong to, and I support now, the National Organization for Women and the National Women's Political Caucus. So I got letters from all of those organizations, plus my congressmen and my senators. And so I think it was hard for them to ignore me.
Well, you're very difficult to ignore. And as you look back with the perspective of time, are there a couple of things that stand out for you on those years?
Yes.
Remind us the years that you were assistant secretary.
From 1993 to 1997. And I want to say it's an awesome responsibility, and it's a great honor to serve people in these positions. I was very conscious of this from the very beginning. And one of the first things I did was I decided that I would profile American Indian women. And so I had a deputy commissioner, I had a person involved as director of the Office of American Indian Trust, a person, several women, and of course, economic development. I don't remember all of them now, but there were 4 or 5 that, and this of course irked everybody because, Ada only likes Indian women. They never talk about the appointments that the guys make, right? So people need to understand that it's hard as the first person to do things, but I never let that stop me, and I want that message out there. Whoever is listening to understand that barriers are there, but they can be overcome. And so that was the first thing I did. And then secondly, there were many opportunities to exercise judgment and the power of the federal government. And a very important document that I signed was a document affirming the sovereignty of the 223 or 224 Alaska Native villages. I also recognized at least 8 tribes, and those were very significant because I was told that under the previous Republican administrations, no tribes were recognized. And so I felt that this was an accomplishment. Plus, there are many, many documents that come through. I signed many gaming compacts and other important orders and memos affecting the Native people. And I could have done more, except being in this high-profile position, I was very conscious of the isms, racism, ageism, sexism, elitism. And I could have done a lot more if I didn't have all those barriers constantly in the background. Plus, it was harder in those years because there was a great difference between President Clinton, the Democratic president, and the Republican Congress. And the government was shut down at least twice, and there were big budget battles, and so it was very difficult to take as hard a proactive stance as I wanted to in that position.
Well, another individual, speaking of breaking barriers, we currently have a president now with President Barack Obama, who's certainly broken a major barrier as the first African-American elected president of the United States. If you were given the opportunity to offer advice to the Obama administration on reforms for the federal-tribal relationship, what would be the top two things that you would say his administration should focus on?
Well, first of all, he needs to exert leadership in this area and utilize his executive powers to correct some of the injustices that are there. That's one. Another one is the affirmation of the treaties. Many people talk about this, and they're in speeches and so on, but he, as the current president, needs to affirm the supremacy of the treaties, and that would help a great deal in resolving many of the conflicts that occur because people want to ignore the treaties. You know, one time I was testifying before the Senate Committee on Appropriations, and the then chair, Senator Slade Gordon from the state of Washington, asked me, well, how long are these welfare payments going to continue, Assistant Secretary Deere? I said, excuse me, Senator. I said, these are provisions made according to the treaties. This country is built on Indian land. It's built on Indian wealth, water, land, other resources, and millions of acres of land were ceded away to the government in the treaty process. And the government agreed to then carry out certain obligations to the native people. And treaties are the supreme law of the land. Exactly. And as long as that continues, that is long as the federal government must carry out its obligations.
Well said, well said. Let me ask you to flip that around and direct attention to tribal leaders. Let's imagine this weekend you're asked to give a keynote address at a gathering of the 560 plus tribal leaders in the U.S. What would be the theme, the central theme of your address to today's tribal leaders?
Today's tribal leaders need to understand and know the complexity of the federal government. They need to know a lot about their tribal history, tribal culture, and this goes for the young people too. They need to have a well-organized plan for their tribe, and this shouldn't be changing during every changeover of the tribal leadership. And they need to seriously look at what the issues are, what the problems are, and exert their leadership. They need to be true to their own tribal culture and their own tribal history, and understand their long connections reaching back to our ancestors in prehistorical times to today. And it's very hard being a human today. It's hard being an American Indian. It's hard being a person in a leadership position. They need to really focus on the young people so that the young people understand the history and culture of the tribe and are then able to take their share of the responsibility in helping the tribe not only survive in the century here, but also to thrive 7 generations on. And that's a tall order, but our Indian people have survived all the onslaughts of the federal government for 500 years, and I like the current title of the series, PBS series. It says, "We Shall Remain." And indeed. I tell people, we're not going anywhere, we're staying right here. So it requires a lot of resources. You have to have lawyers to help protect the land and the resources and resolve some of the tribal and jurisdictional conflicts that occur between the tribes and the states, as well as the federal government. So it's hard work, and they have to fight to help their people, to protect their land, and they should actually work to get more Native people in positions of influence outside our tribal communities, because, for example, in Montana, there are now a number of Native people that are members of the tribal legislature, and I'm happy to say I know a couple of them, and it's wonderful. They also have a sympathetic governor at this point who is more open to recognizing the tribal governments as sovereign entities. As a matter of fact, he has all the tribes' flags in his office, and I was really surprised to learn that, and I commend him for that.
It's a good gesture. Speaking of the tasks that tribal leaders face, one of their tasks is nurturing the next generation of tribal leaders. And I wonder, as we wrap up this interview, we're on the Dartmouth College campus. You've had time to meet and get to know some of our young Native students, learn from their stories about their backgrounds, their hopes, their aspirations, and so forth. What advice do you have for today's young Indian students, high school level, college level students?
Well, first of all, one must go to school and get a good education. Don't just do minimal work. Know that you are a special person. Our Native people are special people on the planet. Well, actually, all the humans are special. But when we think about the history and culture of Indian affairs and Indian people and Indian tribes here, I would like them to feel the strengths and the wisdom that it took from previous generations to enable them to live the life they're living today. The treaty chiefs, and they didn't know what they were signing, but they had in mind, and they did retain land and rights in these treaties for the future. And so they need to think of we, not me, and this goes for all the people. That's getting back to the basics of Indian culture: the respect for land, respect for the animals, respect for the human beings, generosity, sharing, caring, and then weaving their own lives around those basic human values. Not everyone needs to go back to the reservation. Actually, half of Native people live in urban areas now as a result of the relocation program in the 50s. And so there are many opportunities for service to not only Indian people, but to others too. Yes, I'm a Native person myself. I'm a social worker. I have an agenda for everybody, including everybody on the planet. You know, we need to have everyone have food, clothing, shelter, and I want to emphasize the joy, the deep joy one obtains when you participate in a significant event and you provide, in some measure, your contribution to the tribe. For example, in my instance, and I feel a strong connection to my tribe as well as all people, I grew up on the Menominee Reservation in a log cabin on the banks of the beautiful Wolf River. I absorbed the love of land and the love of our tribe. And I knew when we were terminated that eventually I would have to do something about this, because my mother was always reminding me of this. And the tribe did award me the only tribal scholarship. It was then $1,000 a year for 3 years. And that paid for my room, board, and my tuition. And so I did have to work for earn my little pin money. And then I attended the wonderful University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I want to remind the Dartmouth students here, now as well as in the future, that Dartmouth is a very special place in higher education in this country. Its basic core is devoted to educating American Indians, and Dartmouth, especially now since the 70s, has really worked to carry out that basic mission. We now have a wonderful group of young Native people from across the USA, and the education that one can receive here is superb, and it's important to assume responsibility as a human and as a citizen and as a Native person to give back in some way to your tribe and to the larger community. You know, I've been to China twice. I could tell them a couple things, but they're not asking me. You know, notice that human rights is very big on the world's agenda, and many countries around the world are struggling to resolve this issue. So,
well, I think the theme of responsibility and giving back, if we take away anything from your great time and the fortune that we have to have had you here at the Dartmouth campus, those are certainly two themes that I think can serve us in good stead and serve students in very good stead. It's this idea of responsibility, using their education for a very specific purpose, as well as this own selflessness, giving of themselves. So thank you very much.
I enjoyed it.